In 1999, Professor David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger of Cornell University published a widely influential paper that became a landmark paper for its time, but has since been widely referenced. The name of that paper was Unskilled and Unaware of It: How One's Difficulties in Recognizing Their Own Incompetence Leads to a Self-Inflated Assessment. The paper basically detailed this. One has cognitive bias that causes an individual with limited knowledge or particular skill set in an area to overestimate their abilities in that area. They described that people who knew the least about a particular topic were often the ones who spoke the most about it. And many times, those that were somewhat educated on a topic were very hesitant to speak up, for they had soon understood how little they really did know in the depth of that topic. And so there was a dichotomous relationship that those who knew very little spoke too much, and those that knew more spoke too little. And as we understand, we see this played out on a daily basis in the workplace, and as with me, if you go to a middle school, you'll see it on display every single day in about the 7th and 8th grade. The Dunning-Kruger effect, as it became known, has been on full display. Well, it's exactly what Mark Twain talked about whenever he said, "I was a boy of 14, and my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to be around him. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much he had learned in 7 years." It's because he learned how much his father really had known all along. And we understand that Christians have to realize that there are sometimes things we need to stand to grow in, and knowledge is the first one of those. Whenever we read that Christian boldness is something we're required to have, boldness is not arrogance. Boldness is not pride, because pride and arrogance are never spoken of favorably in God's Word. But we do need to understand that we shouldn't display an overly confident sense of our own expertise. And so this feels counterintuitive to us. This feels like something that maybe we don't know how to approach, because we understand there are times we need to remain silent, but then there's also times we need to speak up. James advises believers to be slow to speak in James chapter 1. Also, that a religious man will bridle his tongue in the same chapter. Again, Paul teaches that Christians' words should be always with grace, seasoned with salt in Colossians chapter 4, and shows us the need to use wisdom in how we use our words to communicate. The Proverbs tells us in Proverbs 10, "When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent." And so just as Dunning and Kruger would point out in their landmark article, the dichotomous relationship in communication is this: sometimes we need to speak up, especially when we know what we're talking about pertaining to God's Word. I'm reminded of the famous quote attributed to Edmund Burke that said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do and say nothing."